we wanted to put on a webinar specifically for first-time buyers, because it's a really daunting time. And I remember I first bought my home, I won't even say how many years ago it was, but I still remember that feeling of sort of nervousness. That it's quite a daunting prospect. It's a big thing that you're doing at the end of the day. It's an awful lot of money, probably the most amount of money you're ever going to spend. And there's so many different moving parts that happen when you're buying a house. You think about the legal work that has to happen. You have estate agents involved, you have mortgages, you have loans, and often for the first time, it is your first time, because it is your first time, isn't it? But everybody has to start somewhere. So we just wanted to put on a really informal situation today where we're presenting a webinar. We're going to bring an estate agent in, a conveyancer in, and a mortgage advisor as well, just so that we can get all the questions answered. And it's supposed to be for you today. No hard sell. It's just to give you information to help you out if you're looking to buy your first home, so that you go away leaving the webinar thinking, that was useful. That was a good use of 45 minutes of my time, and I know more than what it was when I started, and hopefully you're feeling slightly less scared as well. So I want to bring together several different guests here. Now, in this technology day, there is often things that happen with technology. So we have a bit of a blip in that one of the guests at the moment, her computer's typically decided to do an update at the moment, so isn't here right now. Hopefully Holly will be joining us slightly later on. But if not, I'll be answering all the mortgage questions, because I can do mortgages anyway. So I'll be answering any questions that you've got. As Kelly said, there is the raise hand button at the bottom. If you wanted to raise a hand and make a point, you can. But what I was asking you to do is in the Q&A box, any questions that you want to add into there. And as Kelly said earlier, no such thing as a silly question. We won't necessarily use your name when you're asking it. If you just want to ask something, put the question in the Q&A and we will do our very best to answer any questions that you've got as we go along. This webinar is live, so we'll be doing all this as we actually go. Holly looks like she's joining at the moment again, so here we go. So what I'm going to do is introduce the panel of people that we actually have here. So first of all, we have Sarah Coppard. Sarah Coppard, her married name is Harley, is the founder of Citrus Conveyancing Limited. Now, I first met Sarah in the early 90s because she actually helped a client of mine buy their first home. And I was always really impressed by the way in which Sarah conducts herself and the business that she does. It's really friendly. You know, buying a house or moving home can always be a really stressful time, but Sarah just has this manner about her, just making it all seem nice and peaceful and takes the stress out of it. So we've always got along for those sort of 20-odd years. Sarah's also been very well renowned in the area. She's worked in Maidstone, Eastbourne, and has been all across Kent and Sussex for since 1987. So her wealth of property knowledge is second to none, and I would never go anywhere else for my property advice. So that is why Sarah is on here. So that calming influence, really useful when you're buying your first home. We've also got James Hinks. Now, James Hinks is a great man. He started working actually bizarrely at Harrods and Selfridges in London before moving into estate agency. Now, James has been across different branches all across Kent and East Sussex with some really big, well-known chains that you would all heard of. And as a result of that, has got this huge in-depth knowledge about the property market all around that area. So it was nobody better that we thought could bring an estate agent's view along line. Those of you that might not know who he's working with now, he actually owns the estate agent Jack Charles. Now, they started off in Tunbridge. You can't miss them. Got fantastic branding, actually, grey and pink boards all around, and he's opening up different offices all around Kent as we speak. And just wanted to bring him into there because he's an estate agent. What's an estate agent's view on buying your first home? What's it all about? So we're bringing him in line as well. Holly Bettles, lastly. Holly has over 10 years experience of actually working with arranging clients' mortgages all across Kent and East Sussex and much further afield. And she started off being a broker for an estate agent and then worked for a bank. And then latterly she's joined us here at Citrus and is proving her worth and being a brilliant, friendly, helpful mortgage advisor. You want somebody when you're doing these transactions to make and take the stress and the pain away and feel like you have a friend. And that's very much what all three of these guests bring to you today. They're just nice, friendly people that will explain things in language that you and Mike can actually understand. And that's what we want. We're trying to cut through the jargon and bring you something really, really useful. And as I said at the beginning, that you then leave thinking, I'm really glad that was a good use of 45 minutes. Any Q&As that you've got, please put them in the box. We will get to that later on. So what I want to start off with, first of all, is I'm going to start actually by looking at, this is the journey. Here's the map about buying your first home. Complicated, isn't it? Lots of different boxes, lots of different bubbles, all sorts of things. Now, if you're looking at this, you're probably reading all the different boxes and the bubbles that are there, and it can be quite overwhelming. But don't worry, we're just trying to put it in a clear picture, and we're going to tackle all of those different sections that are there, hopefully in this conversation that we're having today. So that's what we're going to be covering today, from the mortgages, deposits, to estate agents, to the legal side of it, so that you leave feeling better off from having been here today. So I'm going to start off with, first of all, asking, let's start with Holly, actually. Holly, you as the mortgage advisor and a mortgage broker, what is it you actually do? Let's just get that question straight off the bat. What is it a mortgage broker actually does?
Good question. I think you kind of summed it up quite nicely yourself, David. To be fair, I come and talk to you and I find out about you. And that's the part of the job that I love doing. That's why I love doing what I do, is because I get to know you really, really well, because I can't help you unless I do. So I get to know you. I get to know what you're about, what you're looking for, what you're trying to do. And then I use my experience to kind of take all that information, guide you through the process, hold your hand when you want it held, let you do the bits that you want to do yourself, and make sure that we make the right recommendation and you end up with the best possible mortgage, saving you, the most amount of interest and the least amount of stress and hassle. That's the important thing.
It's a good point about the stress and hassle, because, people could go to a bank and do it themselves, couldn't they? So why use a broker?
Because I guess it's that analogy of why have a dog and bark yourself? Like, you could go into every single bank if you like, if that's your jam at the weekend, is to go and walk into all the different banks and have the same discussion again and again and again, then absolutely you could do that. Or you can come and talk to me and we'll have a lovely chat, or any broker, and have a lovely chat, and I will know you more than those banks will. And then I can go to all of the different banks and have a chat with all of them and use my knowledge and my experience. And then you have the business development managers who we know really well as well. So I can talk to them and put your proposition to them, and we'll make sure that we're going to get it right the first time, rather than that toing and the froing and the asking the questions. And I sit in the middle of all of that. So literally I take all your information, I go and talk to the bank, and you can just kind of, plan what your curtains are going to be and what carpet or wooden flooring you're putting down, whilst I go and do all that stuff with the paperwork in the middle. That, let's be honest, no one really wants to have to deal with a load of paperwork on a day-to-day basis, do they? But I do, because then I know that's going to get you to your end goal.
And I think there's also fear as well. I remember when I've done mortgages, is getting it wrong. Is that actually what you're relying on, is the bank telling you the information, and there's always that niggling doubt in your mind. So, well, how do I know I've got the right deal? And you can never stop shopping around. But actually using a broker means that you're delegating that responsibility to them to make the best deal for you, and you're regulated, aren't you? So that you have to do the right thing by the client, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're here for. We have all these systems and all these sources and all these people to be able to talk to make sure we get that right for you. And also, I just think, why would anybody want to go and have all that stress and hassle of doing that themselves, when I can literally take that all off your plate for you?
Excellent. Thank you, Holly. So if you're looking for your first home, how do you work out how much that they can actually afford to buy at?
Okay. So firstly, again, we get to know you and we have a chat. And then we'll look at, I always say there's kind of three main things. There's that whole long trail of things that you've got to do, but there's three really important things when you first come and talk to me. One is your income is in your outgoings. So we'll talk about those, what you've got coming in money-wise, what we have going out that we have to continue to pay. Then we look at your deposit and see how much you've got to put down and where that puts you kind of in the kind of lender's perspective. And then we'll have a chat about your credit rating as well. So it's those three things. If we nail all those three things and get all those three things correct, I can then go away, do all the calculations for you and come back and say, right, you have this deposit, you can borrow this amount and we're confident on this. So this is what you can then go and speak to the estate agent, say, this is my budget. What can I have? What have you got available?
In terms of deposit, then, just thinking, still staying on the topic of money, what sort of size deposit do people need? I know that there's all different percent. What is it you actually need to start off with? Do you need a deposit at all? Can you get 100% mortgages, for example?
So again, this is another really good reason why you'd come and talk to a broker. and not try and fathom this out yourself. There are loads of options out there. So you've got all sorts of different schemes. So some of them are government schemes where you can put down as little as 5%. You've got things that you might be able to do within your own family where actually you potentially wouldn't have to put any money down. No, there are bank schemes where, again, little as 5%, and the more you put in, the better interest rate you're going to get. But actually come and chat and we can have a look at your whole circumstance, and then I can go, right, have you thought about this? Have you looked at that? So even if it's I don't have a deposit yet, but I want to know what I need to get to, I can tell you. Or I've got this far, do I need more, or am I almost there? I can start looking. We won't know until you come and talk to us.
And when should someone come and talk to someone like yourself? After they've found something, or?
No, please don't do that.
Okay.
Well, you can. You can absolutely come and talk to us after you've found something. Of course you can. But ideally, to stop anybody being disappointed, come and chat to us as soon as you think, actually, this is something that I want to do, because I don't want you falling in love with something and me being the bearer of bad news. We'll always do absolutely everything we can to get you what you need. But in order to kind of make sure you know where you stand and what you're looking at, then it's best to talk to us from the very first step, because then we can say, this is what your budget is. This is the max that you can go up to.
So once you've worked that out, and there's loads of different types of mortgages that are out there, and you see, you're just driving around and you look at the bank windows, fixed rates, variable rates, tracker rates, and all that. How do you know which is the right one to actually have? But it is confusing. There's a lot of jargon, isn't there, out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can get so lost in all the jargon. And I always say to my clients when I'm first talking to them, I will try not to talk in mortgage jargon. After over 10 years, sometimes it does occasionally just slip in. But if you don't know what I'm saying, just say, Holly, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often, but actually I'd rather you ask the question and gone, what is that? Then you sat there for the whole time thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about, because that's not helping you, and that's what we're here to do at the end of the day. So yeah, absolutely. There's fixed rate, there's variable rates, there's repayment, there's interest only. That's what I'm here for, to say to you, right, we won't look at this because this is the reason why that's not right for you. These are your options. Let's talk through them. Let's find out where you are and what you're needing to achieve, and then I can make sure that the right thing is taken.
So you're very much there to advise and not be sold to, which I think is really critical in this, because people are quite rightly going to be a bit nervous about all these sort of things. So that's exactly what people want, is to be guided and be what I would describe as that critical friend. It's that if I was in your shoes, knowing what I know, this is what I would do and why. And it's just being that friendly advice, isn't it, really? So that's brilliant. Thank you, Holly. So now you actually know the size of your budget. You've had a chat with Holly and you know what you can actually go to afford to do. You're going to start looking at properties. So how do you start finding that ideal property? And I'm going to go across to James now, who's our local estate agent. So James, what I'm going to ask you, often the journey for a lot of people, it starts online, I would guess, nowadays. It used to be walking up and down the high street collecting lots of pamphlets. I'm showing my age now. But now I guess a lot of people go on Rightmove and all these sort of other sites that are there. They go looking at properties. There's an estate agent. What happens next when they see something maybe that they like that's on with you, for example? You just need to unmute, James, sorry. It's the joy of technology, everybody.
There we go.
There we go. Welcome, James.
I'm unmuted. Probably before I answer that, I think the most important question, or the bit of advice I can give, is make sure you know where you want to live. It sounds really simple, but many people will change throughout that process. So first of all, keep an open mind when you're starting to look and starting to have your search. Now, when you go on the online down the route of Rightmove, which is exactly what you were suggesting, you've got to be mindful that you have a search engine that will take you out of maybe 5 miles, and it's as the crow flies. So you've got to be mindful that 5 miles is actually quite a long way to look. But I just want to put that very briefly into context. I was looking in Royal Tunbridge Wells to buy my house. I bought in Medway. We're talking 26 miles away, but you just keep a very, very much of an open mind. But if you see something you like online, contact us, and then we will talk you through the next process, because you obviously need to book a viewing. You're going to get asked many questions, which is why you need to do your prep before you actually start the house moving. The one thing I'll sort of come to probably again later on is the most infuriating thing for us as agents is people set out to buy something, their affordability is completely off the scale. They can't, there's a lot of time that is wasted. So try to be mindful that you want to get everything as precise as you can so that you're not wasting people's time. For us, our clients are the most important people in our world. And when you waste their time, it's very hard, it's extremely hard to overcome those sorts of bits of feedback when people turn around and say, oh, actually, I can't afford to buy your house, for one. And two, I actually have chosen to move into a different area because they've spent so much time preparing their house, ready to show you over. So there's certain things to bear in mind before you get going. I would say also on the portals, and I'm going to bring this back to agency as a whole, be very mindful. Most people will direct you to Rightmove. As you said, it was the first words that came out in terms of the portal. Yes, they're the biggest portal that are there. Now, not everyone will advertise on Rightmove. As an agent, you're a bit foolish if you haven't advertised on Rightmove. However, it's the next steps to sort of look at. Not everyone advertises on Zoopla, and not everyone will advertise on the market. When I searched my house, I studied and I went through Rightmove. My wife actually found the house through Zoopla. So make sure you're sort of covering both sites or all three sites. I wouldn't do all three, but choose two and stick with them. And you'll probably find. Once you've found something, make contact with us and we'll talk you through the rest. Sorry, I waffle.
No, that's okay, James. Great. And that's a great point about not just looking at one website, because otherwise you're only going to see a slightly smaller net. You're trying to widen your net as far as you can. I think it's great advice as well about thinking about location as well. It's all about location, as they all say, isn't it? So it's a great point. So once they actually contacted an estate agent and they're saying, look, I've seen this house on the web, I want to go and have a look at it. What's involved from that point of view? What sort of questions would you be asking that person? Because presumably you wouldn't just say, yes, sure, what date and time do you want to go? Is there some sort of vetting that you would do to make sure they're okay? How detailed would you go?
We'll go quite detailed. Not everybody likes the questions we ask, but so the first and foremost question that you're going to be asked is, what your position is. Clearly, you're going to be a first-time buyer. And what have you done about your mortgage? Have you got an agreement in principle? What steps have you taken? Now, it's at that point you have to be very, very careful, because if you say you haven't taken advice, it's not going to go down particularly well, because we're going to need to verify your affordability. Now, it's important you do it early, because as we move through the process of finding you a house and you offering, part of the service we provide for our clients is we will verify the affordability. And
it's not you being nosy, is it? It's not trying to be nosy and it's genuine, because you want to make sure that they're put in a good light.
Yeah, if I have an offer going up to my client, I don't want to have to turn around to my client in a week's time and say, I'm really sorry, they can't afford it. It has to be concrete. And not only that, if we can back up your offer and you're in competition with other people. Now, Jack Charles and hopefully many other agents, we've got soft spots for first-time buyers because we know how hard it is for you to get onto the property ladder. I've been there before. I've got 2 children. I think we all, as parents, we look at, what's going to happen and how are they going to afford to get on. And you're up against cash buyers. You're up against people with nothing to sell. You're up against people who need small mortgages. And we need to put you in the strongest possible position. So we will ask you to basically, we will want you to have some sort of an idea, if not just from one person. It's always good to take advice from at least 2 people, to make sure that the first person's telling you the correct thing and vice versa. But once we know your affordability, then you're not going to be disappointed either. So it's important. So when you phone up and ask and say, hi, I'm Joe Bloggs, I'm looking to buy up to 300,000, expect to be told, super, who's your AIP with? And then who have you spoken to your mortgage? Now, if you haven't spoken to anyone, you can ask the question. We can put you in touch with people. They're nothing to do with Jack Charles, but we can put you in touch with a recommendation. Now, a recommendation is probably better than somebody potentially in-house, because there's a there's a fine line with, in my opinion, there's a fine line as to the benefit of that. And not only that, some brokers within agency won't have access to every single lender. So it's important you understand that not every broker has access to the whole wide world and won't necessarily place you. So do your research there. We will want to know exactly the ins and outs of where you're looking, what style of property, and you'll tell us all that information. And I know that my team will always remember that most of you will buy something completely opposite to what you set out to buy. So again, it's keeping an open mind. I wanted a Victorian house. I bought a 1970s semi, and you know, I wanted.
You see it as well on some of the property programs where you see it, where they always show the people round. I'm thinking of Kirsty and Phil. I think they show them this property, that property, and now we've got this sort of wild card, and often the wild card is the one that gets it. So that's really valid. So right, I've made a viewing. What happens on a viewing? Do you show me around? Do the owners? What happens? Well, is it a nervous time for people if they've never done it before? What sort of things should they be doing on a viewing?
First and foremost, just make sure you've had the confirmation of the viewing. Make sure you've had that email. Make sure that it is actually going to happen, and it's not just you're waiting. There's many people who get mixed up. So make sure that it's confirmed your appointment and be there on time. And I mean that genuinely. And it sounds silly because as agents, we have time constraints, so we need you to be there on time. Now, when you're going to the property and you're there, if it's us, 99% of the viewings are done by ourselves. Now, you're going to meet one of our agents. Our agents are going to have great knowledge on the property. They will hopefully make you feel really relaxed and ask any questions that you have. So when you're going to a property, make sure you have a list of questions to ask us. Now, the likelihood is we won't be able to answer them at the time, but we will go straight back. We will get the clients any question we can't answer. We will basically make sure that we've found out what they are, and we'll come back to you. But be armed with questions and feel free to open up. It's not our house. So if it's our viewing and we're showing you over, be as critical as you like. A lot of people, typically British, we are very much don't want to upset anybody. So all I'm saying is that be vocal. Start talking out loud. Start saying, oh, we can knock this down. It's your opportunity to use your imagination along with the professionals' imagination. And we do it for a living. We have seen so many scenarios where you might not think of something, but actually we'll give you ideas, because not every house, I would say every single house that you view, it will always need something. It will never be perfect. So you need to use your imagination, and you don't look in there and go, I don't like the colours, I don't like that. These are all superficial things that can be changed. So feel free, open up to us and ask every question. Now, sorry, go on, Dave.
No, as I was going to say, and I think it's great actually. If I was thinking back to when I viewed houses and properties before, I'd always prefer to do it with the estate agent than the owner. I'd always feel that I have to be polite if the owner's there, because it's the owner. So it's always a bit awkward, whereas I think the estate agent sort of removes that sort of awkwardness. So I think that's great that you do most of them. So
yeah,
another question, James, before we go on to Sarah. I've seen the property, I love it, and I'm thinking, right, it's up for whatever price it's up for. And what do I put as an offer? That's a question that we get a lot. So what offer do you put in? Do you have to go over the asking price? Should you knock it down 20%? What offers do people put in, James?
Again, that will boil down to how we price our properties. We have asking prices, we have guide prices, we have offers over. Nothing is consistent. Now, we're working for the sellers, so please bear that in mind, but we have a duty of care to our buyers, and we are there to advise you. We want the deal to be done, but we are there to get the seller the best price, and that's ultimately the main thing. Now, I'm going to just sidetrack, waffle on for a little bit. I learned a very big mistake when I bought my house here. It had come on. I told you my wife found it through Zoopla. We went to see it, couldn't get in until Monday. We saw it on the Saturday. Went to see it. What did I do? I made a stupid offer that was low. And instead of paying what they were asking or saying, what will they accept? Here's my offer. I negotiated. And there's a period of time that other people were seeing it. I should have paid them what they were asking. And secure the property as quickly as possible, especially in today's market when you are most likely going to be up against other people who are offering. It's a really hard and horrible process to go through, but the more prepared you are before you actually view, the better off you're going to be. And go with your gut reaction. A house is only worth what someone is prepared to pay. If you are prepared to pay what they're asking, or even more, then pay it. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask more if they've got an asking price. I would go in at that point and make your offer at that price. You will always get an opportunity to put another offer forward. So if there's two offers that come in, it will go through into a process of probably highest and final offers. And we will put every offer through in terms of their situation and backed up with our recommendation. So it doesn't necessarily mean a cash buyer is going to get the property, because there is an element that a first-time buyer is as good as a cash buyer because they have everything there. And actually cash buyers can be just as complicated in their own circumstances. So I think pay basically, if an agent turns around and said they'll accept X, pay X. Try and negotiate you can, but the longer it takes, the more likely somebody else will come in the meantime. And if that's the case, I ended up paying $6,500 over the asking price when I could have paid what, straight off. And, I look back and think, I do it for a living. Why? And so I've learned my say. So my advice is pay what they're asking. If it's in a price band, it's usually mid to upper end of the price band, but your heart and your gut reaction will tell you what you want to pay, and go with that. But take the advice quickly from the agent. Do not play games. Do not think, oh, I'll wait 24 hours. The longer you wait, the harder it will be. The quicker you negotiate to get to a secure price, the quicker you're going to secure the property and stop it from being marketed. And Excellent. The stress then sort of comes away a little bit. Sorry,
Brilliant.
David.
Thank you. And all we're trying to avoid is stress at the end of the day, because it can be stressful. The least amount of stress that you can have, the better. So we've got lots of questions coming in that we're going to get to at the Q&A. So keep those coming. If you've got any questions, drop it in the Q&A. I can see all sorts of questions, and we'll try and see if we can get to them. We've got quite a lot coming in, so your panelists are going to be busy, which is great to hear. So drop your question in the Q&A. So I'm going to come over to Sarah now, the last person, also the last piece of the puzzle. That makes you sound wrong, but a very valuable piece in the puzzle. Now, Sarah, you're a licensed conveyancer. I just want to ask, first of all, maybe an obvious question. What is it you actually do, and why do we need legal work done when you buy a house? Surely you can just like buy a car and you hand over the money, you get the loan, and that's it. Why do we need a lawyer involved at all?
Okay, well, there's a lot more involved, obviously, than buying a car anyway. Yes, I'm a licensed conveyancer, so I specialise in property law and getting that house that you found from having the value offer accepted to you getting the keys. So I will check things like, well, simple thing like the seller actually owns the property for a start.
Good point.
The extent of what they own. I've got somebody at the moment and they're buying a house with a garage, and the seller doesn't actually own the land in front of the garage. Nobody realised that till I sent the plan to the clients, and so that's come up at step one. There's no deeds to the land in front of the garage, so that's the first thing I will do. And obviously, we want to make it all binding with the sellers and through their solicitors. So we're going to, carry through the process to make sure that you legally own what you've just seen. There's nothing in the background to stop you doing what you want to do with the house. The sellers haven't done anything in the past to the house that they maybe shouldn't have done or haven't got planning permission for. If they've done extensions and things, check they've got building regulation approvals. We'll do searches at the local authority to check there's nothing horrible coming up in the background close by. We'll do planning searches to check for other people might be extending or building housing estates on the lovely field behind you. So we'll check basically that what you see is what you're getting, and hopefully the chances of that all staying the same. So the first thing we'll do is we will have a contract pack from the seller's solicitors, and in there will be a copy of their title deeds. And that's why the first letter I then send to my clients is a plan of the property to check we're buying what they think they're buying.
How long does the actual process start? So if someone's found a property through James, let's say, they've gone to the Holly for the mortgage, they've got all the right mortgage that's there, and they then say, right, we've had the offer accepted. That's when they instruct you, is that right? At
That's
that
right.
point? So then how long does it take from they actually instructed you, they've got everything lined up, to actually getting the keys, which is what they want, to buy their own home?
At the moment, I would say that's taking probably about 6 to 8 weeks. We're depending on lots of people. There's how long the chain is, what comes up in any of the searches, but an average transaction generally last year was taking a lot longer because with the stamp duty holidays and things, everybody was inundated. But on an average time is about 6 to 8 weeks to get to exchange or to get to the keys. 4 to 6 weeks when we can have everything binding in a contract, hopefully.
Excellent, thank you. So with this, there's lots of your job effectively, because I'm thinking again, I'm putting myself back in the situation when I've bought properties before. There's an awful lot of legal stuff, and the amount of paperwork that flies around and plans with red bits of pencil on and goodness knows what. Your job is to make sense of all that and protect the buyer. Is that right? So to make sure that what you think you see is what you get, but effectively you're delegating that side of it to you because that's your job. Yeah. So I haven't got to worry too much. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. And I'll keep you updated with things, you know, so there's when the searches come in, you know, I can explain things to you, give you copies of them. That's my job, to make sure you're getting what you see and that you become the legal owner at the end of the day. And I also will act for the mortgage company as well, because if you've got your mortgage, they want to make sure that their interest in the property is protected. So I will be looking out for them as well, and making sure that all the things line up, really.
Excellent, thank you. So just quickly before we go to Q&A, because we probably could have done this webinar for, we've got a questions we've got coming in, it's quite amazing. We could have done this for a lot longer, but I'm just mindful of and respectful of everyone's time. We said we're going to do it in your lunch hour. We're going to stick to that, okay? So we might have to speed people up here. But Holly, so you've had your offer accepted, you found your legal people do the work. What's the next bit? Do you sit there and fill in a load of forms, or what happens next?
As a client, you don't know. I do.
Okay.
So yeah, no, absolutely. So then we'll go to the lender, and we'll obviously have made sure that's the right lender for you. And I will pretty much do the rest. I'll make sure that I've got all the documents that I need from you guys. We've got a brilliant administrator that would then go, please could I have this? You send it through. I will chase it through, send the information, answer the questions that the lender has got until we get to the point where we have a mortgage offer that goes out to the client, and it also goes out to Sarah in this example. We check it all over, and then we're still there just to hold your hand, answer any questions that you've got, look at your protection, make sure that you've spent all this time actually getting to the point of getting the mortgage and getting everything agreed and finding the house, that we can actually make sure you can stay in the house as well. So yeah, that's what we do after that, in a really short answer for you, David. Excellent, thank you. So one of the things you mentioned there about having a survey done. Now, what if the survey that you've had done pulls up a couple of things, because I don't know about what a property should look like. I find that there's something that's wrong with the house, and what should I do then? From my perspective, I'd probably be saying going and talk to James. So thank you. So over to James. So in 30 seconds, somebody comes to you and says, look, there's something wrong with the property. Can they come back and renegotiate on the price based on what they found that's wrong with the house? And you need to unmute yourself as well.
Muted. Yes, you can, but don't try and renegotiate without having evidence to support what you're talking about. So the first thing is, be mindful that I'm going to be very clear, be mindful surveys. A lot of them are standard paragraphs. A lot of them highlight things that are just standard because they haven't been checked out. They're graded 1 to 3 or A to B, A, B, C. Come and talk to us. Bring the survey in. Come and talk to us. Highlight the issues. We will guide you through the process. I've got 2 amazing sales progressors in Sarah and Marissa, and they will guide you through it. So will the team in the office. But don't walk away frightened. Every survey will scare you. Bring it in. We'll put it in layman's terms. We'll make it nice and easy for you to look at. We'll gather the evidence. We'll chat to the owners, and then we'll take a view. And yes, if we have to go and renegotiate because there's certain things that were unexpected when you viewed, we'll do that. So don't worry and don't panic about anything. Excellent. Thank you, James. Right, it's now at the time of Q&A. We've got even more questions that have come in, so we're going to have to try and get through as many as we can here. This is probably more for you, Holly, actually. Alex has asked, I've started looking at buying, and I think shared ownership is my only choice as a young, single, first-time buyer. Do you recommend shared ownership mortgages? And can you go into a little bit of detail as to how shared ownership works?
Yeah, absolutely. So shared ownership is totally an option. And again, it's one of those things that I couldn't recommend unless I kind of actually had spoken to you and said, like, this, what is your situation? And had a good look. But if that was the route that you ended up going down, then basically the very short answer to shared ownership is you own part of it and you rent part of it. So the big thing to remember is that the mortgage payment is obviously going to be less in this scenario than if you were buying the entire property, but you've got to factor into your budget the rent from the part that you're renting from the housing association as well. So it is a brilliant scheme. There's loads and loads of things like that available. Have a chat with a broker and see what options are open to you. I think it's the best thing.
Okay, and we've got another question here from Paul for you, Holly. What's the advantages and disadvantages of part buy, part rent, which is a similar sort of question. So what's the sort of advantages and disadvantages of part buy, part rent?
Yeah, so same thing, just slightly different name for it. But I guess if you put together the rent and the mortgage payment, quite often it'd be more expensive per month than if you were buying the entire property. But if you compared it to renting a property of that size, you'll generally find that that payment is smaller than the rental, even though it's larger than the mortgage would have been. So there's that. I guess the big benefit to shared ownership, part buy, part rent, is that the affordability and the deposit is based on the share that you're buying. Therefore, you're having to borrow less, put less down. And for some people, as you say, if you're single and you're buying it on your own, there's only one income to take into consideration, then that can sometimes work in your favour.
Excellent, thank you. Someone else asked, probably more for James, is there a property search site that you recommend? I think you said there were about 3 main ones. Is there a property search site that's the better one to start with?
Rightmove is always the best one. Lots of other search sites will give you different information, but yeah, Rightmove, Zoopla on the market. Then you've got a couple. Do check out Home Search. It's something that we're looking at. You've got a couple of others like Booming. These are all new guys trying to introduce themselves, but the main one is Rightmove. Every agent advertises on that, but just yeah, I wouldn't search too far away from those 3.
Okay, and I've got another question for you, James. Can I bring a parent when I go and do a house viewing?
I would definitely bring a parent, as long as they don't offer too much parental advice. But no, you've got to do it. They are our worst nightmare because they're looking out for you. But definitely bring a parent, because there's nothing better. They'll ask you questions. Sarah brought a point up about land and making sure buildings are being built behind. It's one of those classic cases that parents will be very aware of when they go around houses that you back onto a field or wherever. Yeah, bring a parent, but it is only an opinion. So make a nice parent.
Excellent, thank you. Question for Sarah. Roughly, what do I need to budget for? What does the legal side of it cost? Things like your stamp duty, legal fees. Roughly, what do you need to know for that in terms of costs?
So stamp duty, if you're a first-time buyer and the property purchase price is less than 300,000, you won't have to pay any stamp duty. So it's 0. If the price goes above 300,000, then you'll pay a bit of stamp duty, but it's tapered. It's only on the bit above 300,000. So that's okay. The searches cost about £375–400. There's a land registry fee of a couple of hundred, and then the legal fees. Our fees depend on the price of the property. So in very broad terms, I would say without the stamp duty, maybe £1,500, including all the searches as well and the VAT.
Okay.
So, yeah, but it's on a scale depending on the price of the property anyway.
Excellent, thank you. And presumably they can ring you up and just get a quote anyway. If they're looking at properties, is a good place to start is just say how much it's going to cost me, and they can get a bespoke quote for the price of property they're buying as well, can't they?
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you. Got a question here. They've remained anonymous, actually. I haven't got a name here, and I'm only using first names anyway. So any questions that you've got, keep them coming. Somebody's asking, Holly, can a broker get better deals than just going direct on something like Go Compare?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, depending on which network you're with, we can absolutely be offered deals that you won't get by even walking into the bank themselves sometimes.
To get lower rates than the bank. So if you went to a bank direct, we could get lower rates than going to a bank sometimes as well.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. Another question for you, Holly. Worried about interest rates getting too high. Is it better to fix for 5 years at the moment?
Completely depends on what your circumstances are. So I would not be a very good broker if I just told everybody to fix for 5 years. Basically, it's going to depend on what your plans are for the property, what your plans are in your personal lives. And that is why we get to know you so well, to make sure that we don't tie you in for anything that's too long and cause you to have to pay penalties. But also we don't want to tie you in for not enough time if actually your plans are that little bit longer term. So it will depend on your personal circumstances. But 5-year fixed rates, for obvious reasons, are very popular at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you. Somebody else is asking, Ken is saying, if I help my son with the deposit, will that affect the calculation of the mortgage? Because often, the bank of mum and dad nowadays, a lot of the deposits for these first-time buyers are going to be coming from family, aren't they?
Yeah, bank of mum and dad is huge at the moment. Thank you very much, mum and dad. That's super helpful. No, it won't affect the amount that the client can borrow. Potentially, we'd have to be a little bit more careful with which lender that we went to. Most of them are more than happy with family deposits, things like employer deposits, gifted deposits, or those kinds of things. They can be a little bit more tricky. So I would say, again, the answer is never just assume no, come and have a chat, but it's that broker experience going, there's no point going to them, they're not going to like that, but these guys would be absolutely fine with that, so let's get cracking.
Okay, thank you, Holly. This is a question, I'm not sure whether to ask Sarah this or Holly, so when you decide. Looking at securing a joint, is from Ben, looking at securing a joint borrower, sole proprietor mortgage, what are the pitfalls in getting this type of mortgage? I'm gonna go to you, Holly, because you're smiling. Sarah was looking up at the stove. I'm gonna go to you first, Holly.
So they're super clever. So these are basically where the lender is saying, we know only one person is going to live in the property, but we need 2 people there to make the affordability work, basically. So the joy with those things is obviously that it can bump the amount that you can borrow, but also we've got to be a little bit careful because things like the other person's age, so quite often, let's say it's a mum and dad that do this and help the children out, the older age of the applicant for most lenders are going to be taken into consideration, which means the term of your mortgage will be shorter, which means your monthly payments will be more expensive. So you might be able to borrow more, but it might be over a shorter term. So it's all going to depend on what that budget looks like each month. And also you are tying in with that person that you're doing that with. So it's not just they kind of sit in the background. They will have legal rights over that property. I think I'm right in saying, Sarah. And so they are going to be named on that mortgage. They're going to own that property with you. So if there comes a time when they want to go off and do their separate thing, having tied in with you potentially could then impact what they want to go and do later on. So there are things that you need to consider, but it is a brilliant scheme that you can look at if we're struggling to get the affordability we need.
Excellent. Thank you. Have you got anything you want to add to that, Sarah?
No, not really. I mean, it's very unusual. I don't see that very often at all. And you're quite right about being tied in with mum and dad or whoever is there on the deeds as well. So yeah, that can affect going forward. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Question for James here quickly. I'm just running right up against 12:45. Can I view more than once if I want to go around and take measurements and look for things like, will my furniture fit?
Yeah, no, of course you can. And it's very important that you do. Especially leading up to exchange, you want to just make sure that you're towards exchange, the house is how you expect it to be. But yeah, you can. But not too many times. But yeah, you can. We try and work out, and I would just suggest on that, try and meet the owners if you have a possibility. So do the first viewing with the agent, go meet the owners, because on that, they will have other things that they can tell you about the neighbours and things like that. And it's quite nice to build a rapport with someone you're buying from. It helps the process smooth out.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Oh, we've got seconds left here. How long does a mortgage offer last for? Paul has asked. Holly?
Generally 6 months.
There you go. That was quick. Another question for you, Holly. I don't have a credit card, but lots of people have said to me, you need to have one to build a good credit score. If I'm looking to buy my first home in the next year or two, will it help or harm me to get a credit card?
So it depends how you run that credit card. So it is something that lots of people do. It's that analogy of if you knew someone down the pub and they came and said, can I borrow £50? And you'd lent them to them before and they'd always given it back, then you'd lend to them again. And that's what the bank's looking at. Do you borrow, pay back, borrow, pay back? So having had the credit, build a credit card, that does help because the bank can see that you're responsible with your money. However, if you run up a big debt on that credit card and then can't pay it back off, or you miss the payments or they're late, that will hinder your application. So by all means, go for it, get it, but be really sensible with it. Keep the balance low and make sure you always make payments on time.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, it is dead on 12:45. I said I was going to respect from your time. huge thank you to everybody who's attended here today. We deliberately kept you anonymous so that nobody knew who was in the room, and there is a lot of you in here. So thank you all for attending. But also a special thanks to James Hinks of Jack Charles Estate Agents. And he mentioned his children earlier on in the webinar. Jack Charles Estate Agents, named after his two sons, Jack and Charles. That's a bit of
Named
trivia
after
for
my
you.
business partner's son.
Your business partner's son. I knew it was named after children somewhere along the line. So thank you.
Yeah.
And a huge thank you to Sarah Coppard from Citrus Conveyancing, and of course, our in-house mortgage broker, Holly Bettles, for all of your advice. So I hope that's been really useful for you. If we didn't get to your question, we will answer it directly, but do get in touch with anything you need to know. It isn't scary to buy your house. We're here to help. We really do want to help. And let us know if we can be of any help to you at all. And someone said, thank you, very interesting session. So there we go. Not a question, but a compliment. So thank you for that. So we hope to speak to as many of you possible soon. But thank you to everybody for being on this webinar. It's been an absolute pleasure. And the time just flew, as we always knew it would. But thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.